we're good.
All right. All right. So my first question to you is, what is the strongest piece of evidence that you have?
So I will admit that there isn't actually any physical evidence that what crashed at Roswell was a Nazi aircraft. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having any argument about it. I think that the biggest piece of evidence is the timeline in general. First off, there are many highly regarded historians and scholars that agree on the fact that the Nazis had the program running. And if you look at the timeline, like I explained in the video that is in progress right now, but you read the transcript, the timing between Byrd's expedition and the events that happened there, to me, the timeline is the biggest thing. And I can't find any evidence that disproves it other than the official government story. And I find too many faults in that to believe it. So I can't disprove it. So that's where I'm at right now.
That's fair. Okay. Why do you think that all the eyewitness testimony aligns with the Mogul narrative so well?
To be honest, I don't. I don't think that they do at all.
Sure.
I think that the testimony that they gave was doctored and stretched by the newspapers and such to seem like it fits. But if you look at the details of everything from the size of the wreckage to how the materials behaved, I mean, there's even doubts, like we discussed previously, that there even was a balloon launched in the day that Charles Moore said that it was. So to me, it just doesn't seem to align. It just looks like they tried really hard to make it align, but that it didn't.
Okay. So how do you explain the FBI document I sent you?
Well, I believe that it was a real FBI document and it was in the vault and everything. It's not unheard of for the government to actually falsify reports and put them in at a later date and date it so that it looks like it's from the original event in order to kind of discredit the original event. I believe that if it had originally been spotted and the original report had said that it might be a weather balloon, they probably would have said that it was a weather balloon, not immediately jumped to flying saucer. I mean, this is during right after World War II, so tensions are like really high. And the US government generally doesn't want to admit that there are things that they don't have control of crashing in the middle of the United States. So I think that if
in that document, though,
Pardon?
in that document, though, they refer to it as a flying disc, and they describe it as something looking like a weather balloon, but they end by saying that it's not, because so why not just say it was a weather balloon? Why say that it wasn't a weather balloon? Well, I guess that's not fair because I'm asking a follow-up question.
Oh, that's fine. Oh, my bird is talking to you. I'm sorry. I believe, like I said, that it was falsified and that they tried to kind of make it look plausible so that they could say, well, it was a weather balloon, but it didn't really look like one because it was Mogul. So we agreed that it wasn't one and said it was a flying disc because it kind of looked like one. Yeah, I think it was another part of the cover story, basically. Yes, I know my internet connection.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so what's your strongest piece of evidence to disprove the Mogul narrative?
I think just the discrepancies in the actual reports of the materials and such, because craft sticks are going to get damaged if you use a 16-pound sledgehammer on them. So and if you look at the size of the material, even if some of the balloons had been lost when it actually crashed, so that it wasn't the entire Mogul array crashing on the ranch, I think it would still be a lot more debris than what is described. Because they're, at one point they say that they tied it all into a 5-pound bundle, and that it was the size of the safe in the room, which was, I think it was like 4.5 by 5 feet. And a Mogul balloon array is like 600 feet in height. So, and the radar target alone is 25 foot in diameter. So to me, just the fact that it doesn't seem to fit what they actually found.
Okay. Okay, so how could it be a craft of some kind when no engine was found?
Oh, you're skipping around on me. Okay. Well, they did find the black box, and I actually found the black box really interesting because it might actually explain some of that. So, the small black box that I rarely hear mentioned, your episode on it was actually the first time that I ever heard about it. And I looked it up and I found some records of it in different reports, but I couldn't find any follow-up on it about what it might have been. Completely unopenable. And have you ever heard of the Coral Castle?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I'm gonna post edit and put some pictures of it in here and of the little black box that this guy supposedly used. But Coral Castle, this crazy rich man, basically. He was very small, very sickly. I think he was trying to woo a lover. And he built this massive structure that there's no way that he should have been able to move these stones. They're huge. And he was the only one working there, and he supposedly did it completely by hand. And the way that he claimed that he moved these stones was through a little black box, about that big. And he would put it up on a tripod, and this would somehow make the stones lighter so that he could move them completely by hand. I mean, he's not using cranes. He's not using any type of heavy machinery. He's just picking them up and putting them up there, giant stones. And that matches the description of this little black box. So I'm wondering if that might have actually been some type of engine in itself. Not, I think they tried to say it was a microphone or a weather recorder. Furthermore, we know today that levitation and even propulsion, not a whole lot of propulsion with the technology we have right now, can be achieved with using reverse magnets. In fact, I was listening to an episode of The Midnight Ride the other day, and they were talking about Tesla coming up with a technology where you had a small magnet that was strong enough to actually reject the Earth's magnetosphere, so that you could move around because the magnetosphere was literally powering you. And with very minimal propulsion systems, he was able to actually move stuff around without a visible engine. So I think the little black box might have been some type of an engine. And you have to remember too that the Nazis, which I believe is where this came from, they were in contact with spiritual forces, fallen angels, the real. They thought they were talking to aliens. I don't think it was aliens, but black magic, stuff like that. So there's no telling what spiritual or magic, fallen angel technology was involved there as well.
Okay. Question 7 is, why would a craft have sticks?
Well, honestly, I think for one, even the Nazis would have to have some type of a frame for their structure. So sticks to me isn't that extraordinary, but I don't believe that these sticks were what it's said to be, which is just the wood coated with Elmer's glue. I think I've seen plenty of balsa wood sticks, doils and stuff, and even coated with glue, you can tell that they're wood. and Marcel and Brazel both said that it did not look like wood, and they could burn it.
Well, actually, is it okay if I interject for a second?
Absolutely.
Marcel actually specifically referred to it as looking like balsa wood.
Did it? I don't have the interviews here.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
I actually do have it real quick. He said he's looked something like balsa wood. I think was during his interview with Friedman.
Okay.
Yeah, he said that yeah.
Okay. Well, let me see. What do I have? Okay. I have all of the notes in one notebook, and I don't even have them labeled or anything. So give me just a second. There's like all of the phenomenal notes in here. 16-pound sledgehammer. There's little numbers. Okay, this is actually from his Friedman interview, but I didn't have access to the full interview, just the part that they gave us in the documentary I watched.
Yeah, I couldn't find that either.
I don't have. Okay, I guess I don't have that part written down. I might have misread it and thought that he was saying it didn't look like wood, but he was saying that it did. Either way, I don't find it that implausible for it to have wood.
Well, my question is that they all are described as fairly thin sticks, whether it be described as balsa wood or like bamboo. You wouldn't think that would be has a lot of structural integrity for an advanced aircraft.
Well, it depends on how it's being used. For example, if it was just being used to, maybe it was some sort of a casing for that black box. The guy that made Coral Castle had it up on a little tripod. Maybe they had it on a tripod. I don't know.
The balsa wood was attached to what the radar target. Well, I think the radar target was made of. It was attached to the foil.
Like I said, I'm not
referred to the email.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay,
but it doesn't trip me up too much.
Okay, that's fair. Why were there no reports of bodies?
Well, I'm a little bit torn on that one because on one hand, there are the reports of bodies, but it was like 30 years later. Yeah, they do have the affidavits from Glenn Davis or Dennis, I think it is, asking for if that child like hermetically sealed caskets. But in the initial reports, there weren't any reports. So I don't believe that the government would admit if there had been bodies. But at the same time, it does seem like Brazel would have seen the bodies if they were there. So the Dorn, the Nazis were actually developing a version of the Dorn that was basically a drone. It was remotely operated. In fact, it is documented that they actually designed the first. They were basically tanks, and they would use them as minesweepers in the battlefield, and they were remote controlled. So for them to come up with something like the Dorn that was remote controlled isn't out of the realm of possibility. So if that was the case, then there wouldn't have been any bodies. And that might also explain why they were able to use materials such as wood or really thin metal. If it doesn't have people inside of it, not a whole lot of weight, then they could have used something of lighter construction. So that could actually have something to do with that as well. But I am torn on that one. It could go either way because the Nazis did use, they were documented with doing extrasensory. I forget what you call it. It's like, it's not EVP, that's voice phenomenon. It's whatever it's called.
Uh, is
Psychic
it
abilities.
extrasensory perception?
Yes.
Yeah,
ESP.
extrasensory
Yeah.
perception. Yeah, I got you.
Thank you. The Nazis did a lot of experiments with ESP in children, and especially twins. I mean, they had the whole twinning thing with what's his name, where he would actually make twins. Another Nazi scientist that we brought over here, Mengele. He would do the twinning experiments, and these kids would be raised, and they would do the psychic experiments with them. So it is possible that they had the kids, but there were also 3 crashes at Corona that all happened around the same time as Roswell. So for all I know, what Glenn Dennis was talking about and signed the affidavit might have been in reference to something different, that because it was in the same timeline, he thought was connected to Roswell. Right now, that's what I'm more apt to believe, because I don't think Brazel would have missed the kids' bodies.
No, I don't think so either.
Kind of a hard
No,
thing.
I don't think he would have lied about it either.
Pardon?
I don't think he would have lied about it either.
No, probably not.
No. Okay, so my last question was, do you believe that any of the eyewitness testimony is trustworthy? Why or why not?
Yes. Yes, I do. I believe that a lot of the original testimony, like from the very first newspaper articles and such, was reliable, because at the time they didn't have a reason to lie about it. The government was confirming what they were saying. Marcel, I do find to be a credible witness. I know that the information in your book said that he wasn't, but that's honestly the only time I've heard anybody say anything about him not being. So I'm prone to believe that he was a pretty reliable witness.
Did you look into why what that book said about him?
I tried to.
That's not one of my 10 questions.
It's okay. I tried to, but I really couldn't. Like, I tried looking up his how many Purple Hearts he had and this and that to try to corroborate it, and I really couldn't find a whole lot of information available on it, and I can't get the book right now myself, and I wouldn't have time to read it all before I publish videos and stuff anyway. So in the future, I do want to get that book so I can see what you were talking about and how he documents it and such, but right now I can't corroborate any of it.
All right, that's fair.
Okay, did you say that was all of your questions?
Yep.
Okay. All right, my questions. Let me pull up the email so that I can make sure I don't miss any. And I'm probably going to rearrange them from what I sent you, because I kind of jumped all over the place when I was writing them. Okay, so my first question is, why would the U.S. government state in an official statement after already reviewing the material that it was a flying saucer? If it was a Mogul device, the wreckage should have resembled a weather balloon, which they would have at least been familiar with. So it seems to me that they would have said that it was a weather balloon or weather balloon-like, instead of just jumping straight flying saucer.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't think you can really talk about Roswell without talking about Kenneth Arnold. And actually, on the same day that Marcel went to Foster Ranch, July 7th, that's the same day that Kenneth Arnold said that what he saw, he thought was alien. I think that the material having the strange markings on it threw them off. I think that it's also important to realize, when you say government, we're not talking about the White House or the Pentagon.
Right.
And actually, there was somebody there that thought it was a weather balloon. That was Sheridan Cabot. He said that he thought it was just a weather balloon and didn't think it was a big deal.
Okay.
So, and I think it's also important to point out that my FBI document says, in fact, that it wasn't a weather balloon.
Okay, so
So that'll be my answer.
all right. I'm going to skip to one of the questions I texted you. I didn't bring my phone in here, so I'll go off of memory. And it's a similar question, but a little bit different. So this was during a time straight after the World War when tensions were really high. So if they were not absolutely certain that this was a flying saucer, why would they say that? Why would they not say that it was unidentified or that it was weather balloon like, or that they didn't know what the debris was, or that it was a plane? We know from Project Blue Book and others, the government has absolutely no problem hiding anything that they think is a flying saucer because of, so they claim, the fear of causing a panic. So why would they say that it was a flying saucer if they weren't certain? That would just panic people, especially at the time frame that it was in, with all of these flying saucer reports, and people were scared. I think this is near when the Martians had attacked London and destroyed it, and
I think that
everyone
was a little
had their
bit after.
guns.
I think that was in the 50s.
Okay,
I'm
so
pretty sure that was in the 50s. I think that came after. Yeah, so my answer is the same thing. It's because it was during that time. And you gotta remember, it's not all the way up. It was at a lower level. And I think just the power of suggestion, they were so caught in that craze that maybe they wanted to believe it. Maybe they were honestly confused because it was a little bit different than what they're used to seeing.
okay. Okay, so I'm going to skip that question because you pretty much answered that one. Okay, one of my biggest problems with the theory of it being a Mogul weather balloon. Charles Moore's experiment showed that after 3 weeks in the sun, neoprene turns dark and brittle. In fact, Moore himself stated that a balloon left on the ground for only a few days, so it's already crashed and it's on the ground, would begin disintegrating into black flakes after only a few days. If the debris had been left in the desert for 3 weeks, which is what supposedly happened in full sun, in the middle of the summer, nonetheless, then what were the rubbery strips? All of it should have been, I mean, some of it might have been at a different consistency, but given it had already crashed, all parts were exposed pretty much to the sun, to the UV, and they all should have been pretty deteriorated at that point. So what would the rubbery strips have been? Or why would they still have been rubbery if that was the balloon?
Well, the question is, well, the answer is the rubbery strips were rubbery strips. According to Moore, the flight number 4 was launched on June 4th, and Brazil found them June 14th would be under the 3-week window. So when he described it as gray strips, that would be accurate. And even according to Moore himself, he did say that they could look black after a few days, but he also said they could look gray. But he said that after 3 weeks they would look mostly black and charred. And Jesse Marcel's son actually said that there were black little pieces of plastic that his father showed him, which would line up with the time frame of decomposition of the balloon.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that I read that Marcel actually, and possibly Rainey, actually described there being rubbery strips, and that was after it had been recovered and reported in July. So how would you explain that? I would agree with that if it was recovered and analyzed on June 14th, because the timeline would absolutely fit. But if it wasn't looked at by Marcel until July 6th, there should have been nothing to pick up basically at that point.
Do you have a direct quote of him saying that?
Give me a second and I will see.
Because the photos in the office actually show black pieces of plastic.
It must be in, sorry, it must be in one of the newspapers. I only have Friedman's interview written down in here. And some stuff from Randall. none of which is helpful. So I can look through pull up the doc and look through the newspapers real quick, but I don't want to eat up all of our time either. I don't know how long we've been on.
I understand that. So I guess my short answer would be that my understanding is most of what was left was black and charred, but I guess it's possible the other pieces could have been better condition. I guess it's not impossible, but that's what I would go with.
Okay. If the wreckage was completely in tatters and shredded, which is what is pretty much shown and described, how was Ramey able to discern that the supposed radar target was hexagonal in shape? Radar targets are only visible as hexagons when you look at them from directly above or below, which he shouldn't have been able to. For one, you'd have to put it apart, put it back together completely accurately. And given it's 25 feet in diameter, you'd have to be a little ways above it or below it in order to see it being hexagonal in shape. So to me, it implies that he was told that it was supposed to be hexagonal in shape.
I don't know if that type of reflector was actually hexagonal though.
Well, again, I'll have to edit it in here because I didn't print out anything. If you remember when I sent you that slideshow, actually had pictures in there of the schematic designs that Charles Moore actually supplied to somebody that Roswell proof was quoting from. And it actually had the schematics for the radar targets that were designed to be used with Mogul. And if you're looking at the schematics, you can see that it's a hexagon, but that's only because on schematics, there's no depth cues. In actual crashes that have been admitted to be Mogul, they just kind of look like boxy stars if you're looking at them from anything other than one specific angle. Okay, we got 10 minutes.
Yeah, so oh darn. So my quick answer would be that it's one thing to look at a picture, it's another thing to actually have it and to examine it. And if you're familiar with radar targets, which were not a classified component of Mogul, it may have been possible that he could have deduced that. Plus, there's actually they called upon a meteorologist to consult when they looked at the wreckage.
Okay. That being said, then, this was one of my questions that I actually deleted and didn't end up sending to you. But since I got rid of the other question, I'll put that one back in there. That being stated right there, Marcel actually went to radar target school. I don't know what you call that, but he studied radar targets when he was taking his engineering classes. So given he studied radar targets, why would he not recognize the radar target?
I would say because of the hieroglyphs, and the power of suggestion.
Okay.
And the black box.
All right. Power of suggestion is definitely a powerful force. So yeah, that's possible. Okay. So given the radar target was completely shredded, why would not only the radar target be completely shredded, but the remnants of only one balloon found on the ranch? Like, I could understand if they found 4 balloons or 5 balloons, 8 balloons, of any number of the array, but only finding one from the array seems kind of strange.
Well, what I would say is according to Charles Moore, if the wind was strong enough, it was drug across the ground, it could have torn apart, which would explain why it was torn apart. But as far as the balloons, Bill Brazil Jr., Matt Brazil's son, said that he actually found additional wreckage after the incident went away. Okay. So that could account for it. It could be the multiple crash site theory,
All right.
but also, yeah, I don't know for sure.
Okay, I hadn't heard that before. Like I said, I'll have to get this book in the future and actually look through it. The internet is great, but books have a lot more information in them. People that actually do the research in the libraries and stuff like that.
Well, internet's McDonald's, books are Subway.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think, okay, I have three more questions. I'm going to make them real quick. All right, I'm going to cut that question out, so make that 2 questions. Do you know anything further on the black box? Was there any more information available on that in the book? Was it ever studied in depth, photographed?
Yeah, the black box was called, I believe it's called a radio sonde. That's how you say it. And it was used to measure the temperature, humidity, and it was also had a shut-off switch.
Okay.
Yeah, I could take a picture of it and let you read what it says if you want.
Yeah, I'll put it in the video too. That would be great.
Okay.
Okay, finally, Marcel described the tinfoil not only as regaining its shape, it's crinkled, but described other pieces of the metal as completely unburnable and undentable, even reinforced with parchment or even Kevlar. How does tinfoil refuse to be dented with, as Marcel reported, a 16-pound sledgehammer? Mm-hmm. And that's from his Friedman interview. Mm-hmm. I can't actually quote that one.
So is this the question why it didn't dent?
With a 16-pound sledgehammer. Yeah.
Okay. As far as burning, I heard 2 accounts of it being burnt. One with the cigarette lighter, and one he put it into a campfire. And it may be that those 2 instances may not have been sufficient as a burn test. And as far as the denting, I don't really think of tinfoil as something that dents. Do you? I mean, I think of metal as denting, but I don't know about tinfoil. And plus, I think his overall credibility at times is a little bit shaky. And even on the military record of his, it's known that it says that he was known to exaggerate the severity of a problem.
Okay. See, I can't find anything on his military record. If I look up Marcel, I get Roswell. That's it. That's it. I can't find nothing.
I can send you documents.
Okay.
I almost sound like Alex Jones, but I got the documents.
Yeah, you got the documents. All right. Careful, we don't want to get kicked off for you saying Alex Jones. Okay. So.
Had to.
I believe that he's talking about the tinfoil. That was my last question. So I don't know how much time we got. It's supposed to give me a 1-minute warning before we get kicked. So.
Okay.
I believe that it was him talking about the tinfoil, but in his interview, because I didn't have access to the full interview, it is a little bit shoddy. And he was saying they're just fragments strewn all over the area. He was saying that it weighs nothing, no thicker than tinfoil in a pack of cigarettes. He says, I don't know who he is. Nobody commented on it in the documentary. It could either be Brazel, Cavett, Ramey, could be anybody. He says, I tried to bend the stuff, says it will not bend. He says, we did all we could do to bend it. It would not bend. We even tried making a dent in it with a 16-pound sledgehammer. He said, still no dent. And this is supposed to be the same stuff that had hieroglyphics on it. I can't tell.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess one question, one thing I have to point out is if it's as strong as he said it was, why would it tear apart?
See, that was why I had asked one of the questions that I texted you, and I decided not to ask here because we were running out of time, was what could destroy it? Plus, there is
Yeah.
no other
So-
instance that the radar target was actually destroyed. There's at least 5 other, and I have the photos of the radar targets from the crashes, instances of the Moguls crashing, whether because the balloons eventually deflate over time or weather, and the radar targets are pretty much intact. Even ones that got stuck in trees. And trees will tear stuff up.
So I got a question for you. Do you think the material that was photographed was the actual material recovered?
I see. That's a real. That's an interesting.
Because I think if you look at it, that material looks so much like a radar target, doesn't it? It looks very similar to the
looked at a
radar
radar
target.
As far as it's shiny and metallic, yeah, but
well, I can send you pictures of the Mogul targets.
Like I said, I have the pictures from the crashed ones, but as far as it looking like it, the infamous picture where I think it's Raimi, he's holding it. It might have been Marcel.
And
the infamous Roswell photo. It could be. Well, it could look like a radar target, but mostly what I see is tinfoil. I can't. It just looks like tinfoil.
Well, Marcel, what's funny is Marcel said that what he was photographed was real, but then it was switched out when Raimi was photographed with it, even though it looks exactly the same.
Well, what I have to say about that, I do divide the pictures into those 2 categories of Marcel's one famous picture. There might be others, but I've never seen them. I've only seen that one picture with Marcel. As far as Raimi's pictures go, I've seen a few of them from, I think they took it to Fort Worth or Wright Field, something with an F and a W involved.